Hello, everybody, and welcome to Firefly Chats, the show where we talk all things The Last of Us. I am your host, James T. Keegan, and today we're getting emotional because it's episode 3 of HBO's The Last of Us. So, returning from last week to discuss this masterpiece of television, we have Peter from Triple G Comics. How's it going?
Not bad, mate. Yourself?
All good. We have Luke from Hydra Collectibles.
Hi, guys.
We got Efren from Passpoint Comics.
What is going on, The Last of Us Familia?
How's it going, man? It's good to have you. We got Chris from Coles Collect. How's it going, guys?
You know, very good.
Well, good. I am very excited to talk about this episode. I think it's an exciting one. So before we do that, we've had a bit of news about the series over the last week or so. It seems like there's news every week now about it. So this is very exciting. HBO has renewed The Last of Us for season 2. I think no surprise considering how successful the show has been up to this point. Yeah. And Neil Druckmann has said that the season 2 will adapt the second game. So we're going straight into part 2. Craig Mazin has also said, I don't have a slide for this, but he considers part 2 to be potentially more than a season's worth of story.
Right.
Nice.
So yeah, I think it's very exciting. I think there's a moment in part 2, I think, that is a natural kind of cutoff point to segment it. So yeah, very, very interesting. He's excited about this. I take it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of thought this was a given. I thought it was already kind of confirmed, to be honest. So, but yeah, very excited. Good.
Yeah, everybody like Bella Ramsey had been talking about like the season 2 already, so it seemed like it was already a given. Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. Part 2 is a beast to itself, so seeing that on screen is going to be really interesting, I think. Chris, you said you haven't played part 2, so you don't really have any kind of.
I haven't played it yet. I'm going to put aside a bit of time, I think, and play it. I've got it downloaded on the PlayStation, but I just not
got around to it. Yeah, it's a long one.
I've heard.
Yeah, it's like almost double the length of the first game, I would say. So like, yeah, I could imagine multiple seasons just for
complete that one.
Yeah, it's a great one though. A couple other bits of news. The first episode's available on YouTube, which I think is a genius kind of marketing move, and I don't know why more shows don't do this to give people who don't have HBO Max or Sky Atlantic an opportunity to get into the show. Yeah, so that's cool. And then once again, the audience is growing on the show, so it's a 37% jump from the premiere. So yeah, it's growing every week, which is unusual for a show. Typically, you see a bit of a dip off.
This is why it's important not to drop it all at once, because you need this word of mouth. By the time the final rolls around, these numbers are going to be huge.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of buzz. I'm again, as a huge fan of this series, like in the lead up to the show, it's exciting to see everybody talking about it and so much buzz around the series. And lastly, we have kind of a bit of sad news about the series. We have lost one of the cast members of the original game, Annie Wershing, who played Tess, passed away on Sunday at the age of 45. So I this is I'm really heartbroken about this because I jump at the opportunity at like conventions to meet Last of Us actors, and she was someone I was very much looking forward to meeting. And I think as good of a job as Anna Torv did with the role, I think Annie Wershing is Tess to me. So I think this is really really kind of heartbreaking. Peter, you're familiar with her kind of outside of The Last of Us, aren't you?
Yeah, she played the Bald Queen in Picard.
Yeah.
I don't know if you stopped watching at that point, Efren, because I have to say it was a hard watch that season.
No, I watched the whole season.
Yeah, but she did out of a very poor show, I would say she was one of the shining bits. She was superb as the Borg Queen. Yeah, she was very good, and she's no age there. Born same year as me. Do we know what she passed from?
Actually, cancer. So I actually didn't know. I don't know if it was public knowledge that she was suffering from cancer for the last couple of years. But yeah, like I mentioned this in the first episode, Tess is a fan favorite character, and it's in large part because of her performance. So I think it's tragic and really kind of heartbroken about this. So speaking of sad things, The Last of Us episode 3. We're gonna go as usual. We're gonna go around and get everyone's thoughts, just overall about it before we go kind of scene for scene. But I want to go first. I think this is potentially one of the best episodes of television ever made. I think this manages to do in 55 minutes that we spend with Bill and Frank. It manages to do what a lot of shows can't in like an entire season. I think it's one of the most beautiful love stories I've ever seen portrayed on the screen, and I think it's very surprising considering it is quite a deviation from the games, but I think they've really elevated the source material with this one. So, Peter, what did you think of episode 3?
I think I'm going to be the outsider in this stream, and I'm very nervous. I've been nervous about it already. Right.
There you go.
Let us speak before you interrupt and tell us I'm wrong and I get abuse in the chat.
Right? I'm very curious to see because this episode has gotten kind of universal praise.
Yeah, I know, and this is part of the thing because I wish I yeah. So first off the bat, as a love story, as a piece of television, you're absolutely right. It was a masterpiece. I loved every second of it. I was engaged with the story of the pair of them. I did get emotional at the end. I thought there was some beautiful twists in it and the way they kind of framed things. Like, I'm sure you'll talk about it, like how you thought he was dead from the gunshot and then it turned out it wasn't. It was stunning. So don't get us wrong. That was stunning. I came into this episode on the buzz of the last 2 episodes and about the danger that they've set up, the world building, the pace, the excitement, the horror. And this was like banging the brakes on. It was such a change from the last 2 episodes for me that it kind of jolted us a little bit, and it took us out of The Last of Us, and this could have been an episode of, I don't know, something else to me, which was a bit of a shame because it kind of also in my head took away a bit of the threat. So we've been seeing devastation and the world falling apart, and these guys have been living quite merrily for a long, long time. So it took away some of the danger element to us. So don't get us wrong. In terms of a piece of television, stunning love story, loved the characters, loved the way they got on and all the rest of it. But if you asked us to rank my favorite of the last 3 episodes, this is the third. I preferred episode 2, episode 1 than this.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. It's like a kind of thing, and yeah,
you're breaking up a bit, James. I don't know if that's just me or if that's you breaking up.
I can see my wires still going. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
you're frozen.
Yeah. Hello.
It's gone.
Okay.
I'll go on with mine, but James, you're still frozen. I enjoyed this episode. I think these 2 actors played their parts brilliantly. When you have really good acting, it's amazing. I mean, how these 2 actors interacted with each other throughout the whole episode. Like I said, I don't know anything about the video game, and I know they said episode 3 was not directly from the video game, if I understood correctly. I just think, like I said, the acting just blew me away by these 2 actors. I'd seen this Bill before in other TV shows. He's a really good actor. I really enjoyed the series. I understand what Peter was saying, though, how it took away from episodes 1 and 2. You wanted a little bit, maybe more action. But I guess they just planted these characters in there to show them, that they were helping out Joel. And I thought it was a good episode, so I really enjoyed it. Can't wait for the other episodes. I'm sure it's going to be ramping up now, Peter, so you'll be happy.
Can you hear me now?
You're still frozen.
Luke, just continue with your kind of thoughts on this.
I'm assuming he's asking for my
yeah. Yes.
So I'm gonna expand a little bit on Peter's. I'm not gonna say that Peter is wrong because I think that you make a very valid point. But for me, I think this was the greatest episode of television that I've seen in like 5, maybe 10 years. It had everything from suspense to, the action sequence of like the people raiding the place, and the love story was absolutely beautiful. The reason why I want to kind of bounce off of what Peter said is that I think this is probably one of the most important episodes to have in a show like this, because it's showing you what they're fighting for. It's showing you that even in amongst this world, this 20 odd years from the outbreak to now, people can be happy. People can work to get, to still build a life and have that happiness together. I also think that this is the first time that Joel actually looked at Ellie as if she was a person and not just a product, not something that he just had to deliver. Prior to this, in episodes 1 and 2, she was just the package that he had to get somewhere to get what he wanted. And I feel like now they're bonding. And I think seeing what how two other people could have lived over that time period together happily. This is what these characters want. This is the end game. People want what they had. I'm really glad as well that at the end, I know we'll get to it later, but as the shot's panning out the window, I'm really glad that they didn't end with us seeing them. Because I like remembering them how they were. And it would have been very easy for them to have ended on that horrific scene for the sake of a show that is quite high in horror. One of my questions, and maybe Chris will be able to answer, having played the game, is does this take away, if you played the game and you know who these two characters are, then obviously there was no suspense. Like for me, there was suspense. I didn't know whether I could trust this guy or not when he came to the Bill's home. And so all the way through, I was like, oh, this is going to happen. Oh, this is going to happen. And then I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't. I don't know. Do you still get that if you've played the game, or? Well,
yeah, from what I remember, Luke, because it's been many years since I played the game. I don't remember the full story of it, but I recall Bill was more of, I mean, I'm sure James will correct me, but I think he's more just like a kind of a side character. Like you didn't spend much time with him. So this episode kind of gave you more of an insight as to what he might have alluded to in the games, his relationship, because his partner wasn't alive, I don't think, in the games. So it gave more than what it took away, if that makes sense. It gave us a lot more backstory to Bill.
Yeah.
So it didn't ruin it, I don't think. Playing the game, it's kind of I loved it. Again, like the rest of you, I think it blew me away story-wise and things like that. But we finished there, sorry.
Chris, if James doesn't come back, you're the host, so you know more about this show than us. So
Peter, having let's bounce it back to you then, because James is rebooting at the moment. So given what I've done as a counter to what you said, does that change your feelings, or are you still very much the same? Do you think?
No. Listen, like I said, don't get us wrong. I thought it was a very good episode of TV, but it's not what I wanted at this stage in the game. And I know for a fact, if I put it in my parents, think it was a different generation. If I put it in my parents, I've been telling them to watch this show, and they're holding off because they like to watch it a bit in a big lump. Do you know what I mean? And I know for a fact that when it gets to this episode, they'll switch off halfway through because they'll be bored. It's not what they are expecting from this show. And it wasn't what I kind of expected. Like I say, a beautiful story. I thought it was tremendously acted, very well written, and all the rest of it. But for me, it was like like I say, the breaks going on the show that I was enjoying very much. I did enjoy it, but
I felt like there was suspense all the way through, because I didn't know if we could trust this guy. I didn't know if he had an army of people with him that they were going to break in and raid at any time. When they were playing the piano, which again, I know we'll get to soon, I didn't know if he was going to snatch the gun from him or anything, And even all the way through, and then until we got that time jump where it was like 3 years later, I was like, oh my god, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so quick to judge.
But even I was like, I thought, Luke, even though I played the game because I couldn't remember it that well, when he was playing the piano, like you said, I didn't know if he was going to just come behind him and hit him or use that as a distraction. So I got the same from it as you probably did.
Yeah. So what did you think of it?
It kept me on my toes.
What did you think of it? Did you enjoy the episode?
I loved it. Again, I think it's kind of mirroring what Luke said and what James said. I think it's probably one of the greatest pieces of TV we've had in years. Just the story and the like I said, the love story itself was just amazing. I actually think it pushed along the story as well, the characters. So I think, as you said, it's made Joel, it's broken down his walls a little bit, I think, and it's gave more of a narrative, because when he read the letter as well, it's kind of saying give people a chance and save people because we're the same. So I think it's slowly breaking down the walls of Joel and Ellie. So, like I said, it didn't really need that episode. Like it put a break on it, but I think it helped that character. I think it helped the character building with Joel and Ellie, even though they weren't in it as much. I think it pushed their relationship closer, because there's not many episodes to do it in. So I think it was quite clever the way they've used the story to bring them closer together.
Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to see if I can find James's slides here, because it looks like he's having some trouble. So whilst he's sorting himself out, I'll just see if I can find the slides to bring up.
So, quick question, Chris. Bill, and what's the other character's name? I forgot.
My mind's gone blank now.
I keep on thinking of Bill and Ted. So.
I was going to say Ted.
But
Frank.
So I think they had to
Frank.
Frank. I think they had to put it in episode 3 because they couldn't. They had to know. We had to know what happened to these two characters. If they would have gone to the house and nobody's there, they were just dead. What happened? So I think they had to put it in episode 3. I don't think it would have worked if they had it like episode 6 or 7. Had to go in continuity. And I agree that closing scene when it go from the window, I think was very, well done.
Yeah, didn't want to see the bodies, did we? I think that would have cheapened it a bit.
Yeah.
Guys, whilst we're waiting for James to sort his computer out, let's just start rattling through the slides, or else we're not going to get on. So we'll start off with this kind of scene. I mean, first episode so far where we haven't had a flashback scene. So we have had a flashback in the episode, I suppose, but we didn't have that kind of jump back in time to pre-pandemic. Did you miss that? Did you want one of those?
So I questioned it like very early on. I went, oh, so we're not getting a flashback scene. That's a shame. I really enjoyed those. And then when it turned out that the whole episode was a flashback scene, I was overjoyed.
Yeah. No, I agree. I did kind of miss it. I have to say, because I've enjoyed those ones to start with. Just before we start going through the slides, guys, we'll just quickly jump to the chat and see who we've got. We've got good old StreamYard. Nice to see you. He's always very, very faithful. We've got Past Point Comics. Never heard of him. We've got GP Venom. Chris, I'm hiding your face. Yeah, this is very rude. Just a second.
Fine. Best place for it.
We've got GP Venom. Nice to see you, Pete. Thank you very much for joining, mate. We've got Slick7479, Yo James. I believe that's obviously a friend of James. We've got Ben, the attention-seeking geek. We've also got Gigi. Thank you very much for joining. I hasn't watched the episode, but Marco was insistent that he tells us what happened, how incredibly beautiful it was. A beautiful story, Gigi. I'll give them that. It was a very touching story. James T is reviewing. What a stunning profile picture that is. Doesn't look like him, does it?
Handsome.
James is chipping in from the chat there. Frank, thank you very much. We've got, this will be turning his hair white. This me chairing a bloody computer game show. You'll be
How dare you, Peter?
Sure. How dare What the Cyberman's back?
Can you hear me?
Nope.
No, man, you're still choppy.
We've got Ben saying, I think it's worth saying how refreshing it is to have a genuinely well-told LGBTQ story. Yeah, told well on mainstream show. Often these stories won't be in the forefront or not told well. Absolutely, Ben. It was a beautiful story. Excuse me. It's a really positive and welcome move forward. Ben, if you're still in the chat, did I read something to say that I know Jodie Whittaker's character was bi. But have I read something to say that the new Doctor is going to be gay? I'm pretty sure I've read something about that as well. So yeah, good to see mainstream media catching up. GP, I'm not into emotional love stories, so I don't think I would enjoy this episode. Yeah, I think it's a good episode, GP. It's worth watching. It is a good episode.
Like I say, the episode really kept me on my toes the whole time through. I genuinely didn't know whether or not I could trust the guy. And even when they climbed into bed together, I was like, is he really gay? Is this a power play? A way to try and like get the the fences down and get his people in. Like I genuinely had no idea until we got that time jump of 3 years, and it all just clicked into place. And I was like, wow, I completely misjudged this entire situation. And I'm really glad that that's how it was. I hate when it's predictable.
Yeah, I think for me the scariest bit of the entire thing was eating that unwashed strawberry. I mean, you're fighting fungal infections here, and you're just going to eat a strawberry straight out the dirt. How? Anyway, so going back to the start of the show, we'll have this scene of Joe kind of cooling his hands, and then he's building little towers. Now, I'm a fairly simple man. Was this supposed to represent something? Did I miss something here?
That's what I was wondering too. The stacking of the rocks.
Yeah, because it kind of felt like I should know. Do you know what I mean? Or am I alone on that? You guys felt the same?
I mean, when I go on trails here in California, I always see people stacking rocks, so it's normal for me seeing it. Do you guys see that a lot also over there?
Yeah, we do actually. At least where I am. Maybe it's a bit like of keeping track of where you are and where you've been. Like, like how people will tie like something around a tree or like
James has just jumped in there and said it's for Tess.
Like a grave, like a memorial.
Good.
Maybe she
I knew it represented something.
Yeah, it felt purposeful, didn't it? So I wasn't quite sure what it was. We'll then get this scene where they're kind of in the woods, and I started to really warm to these pair as a relationship. Are you guys the same? Are you starting to really feel that kind of, I don't want to say father-daughter relationship yet, but there's definitely something there, isn't there?
This was the moment where, as she's talking to him, that he realizes that this kid is actually all right and has her head screwed on. She gets it. Like this is the beginning of that bond that I'm saying that we're seeing in this episode between the two characters.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he not have lobbed that sandwich at her as well, didn't he? That was quite a good bit. But yeah, what about you, Chris? Are you starting to enjoy this relationship?
Yeah, like I said, it's the relationship is part of the kind of story with the games and things as well, and it's good to see the audience seeing it as well, and it's good to see how they're getting to this point now of where they're getting.
Yeah.
One thing throughout this episode or any episodes, do they have? If I was these people, I think I'd be looking on the ground all the time, make sure I don't step on something, one of those connecting things. So you step on it, they know you're around.
And Ephraim, I mean, that's a really good point, Ephraim, because, and again, I know I mentioned it earlier there about the strawberry as a bit of a joke, but if it's a fungal related thing, surely you would be panicking because it's all over the place, isn't it?
There was that same scene that you're talking about when they're in the garden with the strawberries. There was lots of pollen flying around, and I was concerned that was spores.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So no, I think you're right, Ephraim. I think, I guess they've lived in this world for so long now, they're just kind of becoming, I don't know, a bit used to it, or they know what the signs are. Whereas we're new to the world, aren't we? Really, so I would be panicking looking at.
Some of them do dry up. They've shown that already. Some of those, whatever those things are called, they dry up after a while. So
yeah, they go crunchy, don't they? Crispy.
Yeah.
I mean, James has literally put it word for word here. I don't know if he wants to go into more detail, but yeah, it was a lovely relationship. And these guys, I think, are phenomenal actors, aren't they? They are absolutely phenomenal. I'm enjoying their work immensely. Then we get this bit where the kind of, we're crossing over the bridge, and there's this joke, isn't there, about the shooting side of things. Are you getting the humor so far on the show? Are you starting to feel the kind of the banter between them?
Yeah, I thought he would get pissed off because when he said somebody shot at me and missed, I thought it might have been that soldier that shot at him and his daughter.
That's where I thought it was going. I have to be honest. Did you think that, Luke?
I mean, again, we don't know what Joel is really capable of at the moment. Like we've seen him with that scene right at the beginning, and that was when things first started, let alone 20 years in. Again, I know we'll get there later on, but that's when I started to get worried when I saw that Bill and Frank had Tess and Joel round for dinner. I remember Tess saying that Joel and her weren't very good people, and so I was worried that our heroes were actually going to be the villains of this flashback story.
Well, I'm absolutely there with you, Luke, because when they had that original kind of meal on the lawn kind of thing, I was thinking, if this was, I know I'm going to say it again, if this was Walking Dead, you know they're coming back that night with a gang to rob the place. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of the world we lived in Walking Dead. So I'm very surprised these guys lasted so long without.
It was all very trusting, and even though I was really hesitant about it, I was worried for them. But at the same time, I think you need to be trusting. People need to band together in those times, and if you can't open your doors and trust people, and I think that's what made Frank so special, like compared to Bill, who was very much a prepper and a recluse. Frank brought him out and welcomed him into the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know there wouldn't be a video game or TV show, but if this was real life, I think Joel and Tess would have stayed there with them. They were enclosed and they could move. They didn't have to be close to them, to people they trust, But like I said, that would be the end of the series. So I'm sure that's why they did it.
Yeah. And then we get to this bit where they're is this where she's trying to get the gun off him again? Yeah. She's obsessed with getting a gun, isn't she? I mean, she gets one in the next few scenes, I think, but she absolutely is. And then we get this bit where they kind of go into this warehouse and there's the Mortal Kombat game. Now, I would have thought Mortal Kombat would have been kind of well beyond her age in terms of when it first came out. But I'm guessing, isn't there a backstory of her being raised by the military people? I'm wondering if they had this kind of games and technology and stuff like that when they were there. What did you guys think of this scene overall?
I think they should have put a Walking Dead video game up there,
Yeah.
But I liked it. I mean, it's just showing her, like on every time she sees something, like it's awesome to her. So she hasn't been in the outside world. We're looking at through her eyes.
Yeah.
Video game and more. If we're going to talk about other scenes, just her exuberance and I'm out. Just I know it's life threatening, but to her, it's almost like an adventure. I'm actually doing something.
Yeah. To her, every day is the best day.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've seen bits, haven't we, where she said, it's the car at the end, which has never been in a car before and things like that, Chris, this bit here where she says, I had a friend who knew everything about this game. Is that part of the backstory of the character? Because James said last week there was like what do you call it, a downloadable content thing where it went into her backstory or something?
Not that I can recall. It's been a while for me, Pete. It's kind of the main story that I remember playing.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot of the kind of side Easter eggs and things like that. Oh, I'm trying again. We are.
You are frozen, sir. Bye.
James, in the chat, let us know what you want me to do, because we can keep rattling through this. I'm sure the four of us can keep going if you want, or we can stop it and do it another night. Whatever you want, just let us know in the chat. Whilst you're pondering that, we'll just keep cracking on and going through these slides. I'm slightly concerned that you've literally kind of done it scene by scene by scene, so we may be here a while.
So again, like I have no reference to the backstory or the games, and I'm really trying to keep it that way. Like so much so that I don't even want to know about season 2. I don't even want to see the game cover for the second game in case it reveals that a character is or isn't there. Like, I don't want to know anything about this. And so far I'm managing to, so fingers crossed. But I'm really intrigued to find out what happens when she gets a gun. Is she going to be this amazing badass with it, or is she just going to be a kid with a gun and it's going to be
I think, and I mean, I have absolutely no doubt, Luke, we're going to get about 4 slides in a few minutes about one scene, which I think might give a bit of a hint at that. But James has obviously put this in here because this is the computer game, I believe. So this is showing you that it's kind of almost scene for scene in what they did there, just the slight different computer game, I guess it was, arcade machine. Yeah, that was a funny line. Is there anything bad in here? Just you. Yeah, that was a good one. And then we get this bit where she goes downstairs into the kind of the locker thing. First of all, going back to Ephraim's point about the fungus and stuff being everywhere, this kid's got some nuts, hasn't she? Would you be crawling into dark things like that?
She was born into this world, so to her, it's probably just normal. If it was one of us, I said, no way am I going down that.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. And then we get this bit, and this is the bit I was just alluding to Luke, where this really changed the character a little bit for me. What did you think of it, Chris? I'll come to you first.
Yeah, she has a little play, doesn't she? Like a little experimentation, and then just goes for it. No emotions. But yeah, I think it's I think you'd be surprised with Ellie as the season goes on.
Right.
What she is kind of capable of.
What did you think, Luke?
So I get what you're referencing, like maybe a little bit psychopath-like. You know, she had a little way about her, but I was more concerned with how fresh this guy looks. Like this wasn't a, you know, where we've seen the clickers before and their faces completely morphed and covered with these things. This guy was very fresh and very new, yet the whole building seemed very run down. It felt very out of place, and I don't know what these things are supposed to look like as a whole. I know that clickers are different to other versions of them, so
I don't know if the fungus somehow nourishes them, or if they're getting sustenance from the ground around them or something like that, you know. But I agree. It was kind of set up like this guy's been there a long time, was how I read it. But you're right, he looks quite fresh and sprouting, shall we say.
Yeah.
Efren, what about you? Because the vibe I got from this, and Ben's just mentioned it in the comments there, weirdly sinister, screams psychopath to me. It was a massive shift in terms of the character. We've known that she's wanted a gun up till now, and then all of a sudden because this is only the second or third time she's really encountered these people, and that one looks pretty human, apart from, you know, you've got an eye and all the rest of it, and she happily just kind of wanders over and starts slicing his head and then sticking the knife in. I was slightly taken aback, I think, by that.
I agree. I think obviously she was born into this world, and I think she's a little bit dehumanized of what's going on. If it was one of us, there's no way we would have got near that thing, you know. But our defense has come up, but for her, this is like normal. And I think it's
and also she can't be infected, so she's almost got like this armor around her that allows her to be that little bit more curious.
That's a great point, Luke. She's almost I guess you could say a bit oblivious to her, isn't it? She thinks she's untouchable.
I got a question
for security, isn't it?
I got a question for Chris. Now, can these creatures, can they die without being killed by somebody, or do they just lay dormant and just wake up when needed?
Yeah, I mean, in the show itself, I'm pretty sure that the fungus keeps them alive.
Okay.
So it keeps them functioning. So I'd imagine it'd be nourished through the earth or whatnot as well, to a certain point where, like I said, until you see them drying up and whatnot.
I would like to have seen in this scene the view from the creature's point of view, what they can see with the one eye. If it's like normal views or just something different, you know?
Yeah, an interesting scene, I think. And I think if James was here, I know Chris has just kind of mentioned it there, I think we're just scratching the surface of Ellie on. We're probably learn a lot more about her.
I just suddenly had a thought as well, and it's quite a dark thought, so I apologize, and given what Ben's just said. But are we sure that she wants the gun for any reason? That, you know, maybe she wants to kill herself or be done with it all?
Well, Luke, you always manage to lighten the day. maybe she does. You're right. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, because we genuinely don't know, so it could turn out to be that she's gonna end it all, and Joel stops her, and then that's where their bond forms and begins. Like, I really, we don't know what's going on in this kid's mind, right?
She's certainly got an obsession with getting that weapon, hasn't she? It is interesting, and I mean, again, we'll have the whole comment. You know, we're just going to leave the weapons there and all the rest of it. It's just again trying to get the gun. I loved this scene about the airplane. You know, you're flying one of those, and it kind of, I think, for me, brought it back to the fact that, you know, there's been, was it 20 years where people who are born into this world won't have experienced things like that. So I thought that was good. Now there was a comment a little while ago. I think it was James mentioned it about the CGI and all the rest of it. What did you think of that scene? Do you think it looked all right?
Again, going back to what I said before, I think it's all right for television. I think given what they are giving us, I'm more than happy for them to make a few little shortcuts here and there.
Yeah. It didn't jump out as looking odd to me. It looked okay. What about you, Chris? Did you think that?
Yeah, again, I thought it was okay. Like the second episode, that kind of blew my mind when I went outside and we seen the outside.
Yeah.
I know the CGI looked a bit cheap and stuff, but for what it was, it kind of got it home. It made its point. I think it was really good.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like that was quite haunting. That I think, wasn't it, with the airplane on the hill?
We're waiting on bated breath.
Oh no!
No,
hear me?
he's here.
Here we go. Yeah, I'm here.
Yes.
You have control,
Peter.
Luke.
Peter, you held the fort down amazingly. It's amazing how you can put like 4 or 5 hours to put something together and just your computer being a dick and can screw it up.
Have you upgraded from Windows 98, James?
The which? Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I just should get on that. I just say remind me tomorrow. You know. I've been listening along as you went, and I think he's all making touching on a lot of things. That definitely includes some interesting theories, but we'll just move forward anyway. I think the CG here look great, and this top left shot is the first image from the show that was released.
All right.
As well, so this is the first kind of glimpse of these characters. So like they put a lot into this one. Chris, I don't know if you remember, but I thought it was funny, this whole monkey reference, because in the game, and I mentioned this last week, there's sort of several different theories of how the outbreak started. And the one that I kind of subscribed to was the monkey kind of theory. So like there's one level where you pick up like a recording, and it's kind of a theory that's thrown out there. And I'd always kind of taken that as fact that was how it happened.
Yeah, I could remember that. Did the game start with like a news flash was different from around the world? Because I can't recall. You know, just kind of showing the world going to shit, basically.
We lost him. He's on mute.
You're muted.
You're muted.
That's weird. After the title credits, it comes up. So like instead of the opening of the show, the last of Steam, it's like all news reports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I was surprised about the flower kind of theory because I always thought it was the monkey. So yeah, I'm curious if they'll throw that kind of reference in later. Yeah. This felt like a bit of a jab to about like the pandemic that we've all gone through, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it worked.
Yeah. Like our shitty government couldn't prevent it.
I liked it.
And here we have kind of confirmation again of the flower kind of theory. That's what it came in. I like how Joel kind of pauses on pancake mix. So he almost how close he was to actually him and Sarah getting infected on the first day.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think he knows then that's what it was?
I think that's sort of the theory that everyone in the world is kind of subscribed to. Because he says no one knows for sure, but like, yeah, it's flower.
I mean, it does. It makes sense. I mean, if it was going to be a global thing, it's got to be something that's distributed, whether it's through water supply or something else. It's got to be fast reacting, and flour and wheat and bread, and it makes the most sense. Yeah,
and as I said, it's not a coincidence of how many times they like nearly eat something with flour in the first episode as well. You know.
Yeah.
So this line sort of stuck out to me a little bit of like, because you don't really think about it, but like, yeah, Friday night the outbreak happened and just everything is gone on Monday, and it's just kind of scary to think that's how quick something like that can kind of take over.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, watching my girlfriend, and she said that she's like, that quick, and I was like, well, yeah, it's in the global food supply, and it wouldn't take very long for the world to go to shit.
I remember at the start of COVID, is in part of my role, we were seeing some of the projections and things like that, and it was literally those maps you see where you see some red dots and then more red dots and more, and it was just terrifying how quickly these things. It's because of international air travel and everything. Stuff is just spread. In minutes, if not days.
That was the best thing about that live action, the latest Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah.
You read my mind, dude.
Of seeing the pilot going to work, and that's exactly what you need, because the minute he's around, it's not just one flight; it's all the flights, because he's in the lobby with everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, scary, definitely. So we kind of have Ellie sees something, and she kind of goes over to it. And we get this kind of really haunting shot, I think, of the kind of the baby and the mother, and
Yeah.
it's something. I actually didn't catch this on my first watch. It was only when I was doing the slides that I realized that this is the.
Yeah.
I don't know how it kind of glossed over me that this is the woman that like it cuts
No,
to later. You see the same clothes on them and everything, and I just find it's I'm sure you've had this discussion of like with people about like what would you do in a zombie apocalypse or how would you survive, but something you never really think about is like you could just be herded by the government and told you're going to a safe place and they just execute you. Like it's kind of a horrible kind of image to think about, isn't it?
Yeah. Scary.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, this kind of evacuation notice, it's directly out of the game as well, like word for word. So we got a kind of first look at the kind of first glimpse of Bill. Here he's looking at the screens, and instantly the first words out of his mouth, I was like, yeah, Nick Offerman was perfect for this. Like not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks. And we see kind of he does, yeah. It's funny. It's actually a recast. He was supposed to be played by Con O'Neill, who is he's the police commissioner in the Batman. So he was originally cast, and he had to drop out because of scheduling conflicts. But I think ultimately, I'm quite happy that happened. Like, not to any disrespect to Con O'Neill, but I think Nick Offerman did such an amazing job with this. But Bill, so I'll just go through what Bill's role in the game is, because it's quite a big deviation here. But basically, they need a vehicle, and Bill's town is kind of nearby. So Joel says, "I know a guy who owes me a favor," and they kind of head towards him, and you come into the town, and there's all these kind of traps around the place, and you have to kind of sneak under tripwires and stuff. Like, it's a really cool level.
I couldn't remember the full scene, but I remember. Yeah, does he in the warehouse chained up or something?
I was just about to say this is a sequence I was really hoping we would get adapted, and they skipped over, and I'm curious if they maybe will come back to it later on. But there's this moment where you go through a door, and a chain just grabs you and suspends you upside down, and you have to shoot clickers upside down as they're kind of running towards you. I think it would have made a cool action scene, but I don't really see where you would have fit this in the episode that we got. So I think it's fair enough. But I do hope we kind of come back to this.
So is that insinuating that Bill was using the clickers as weapons, as defense, or is that just completely separate?
No, I think I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it's a separate. Like he's fortified some of the town, but he's not like had a full. Like, there are some areas that have a few kind of infected around, so I don't think he's herded them for traps or anything. So this is kind of Bill in the game. He kind of comes in to kind of rescue you, and wearing the gas mask like he does in the show. And one thing that sort of people are a bit fans are a bit kind of upset about, and like not, I think mostly everyone is quite happy with the quality of this episode. But that Joel and Ellie Bill and Ellie have a really kind of interesting dynamic where they hate each other and they're constantly like jabbing. So I think that's something that people are kind of feel like they've kind of missed out on. Like, there's a lot of great lines between the two of them. So yeah, I sort of agree with that. But I think the fact that this episode turned out so well, I'm not really obsessed about it. But yeah, like a lot. I was talking to Ben yesterday about Bill, and he was shocked to know that like Ellie and Joel meet Bill in the game. So like it is such a crazy deviation that they made.
Sorry, does Bill survive in the video game, or
Well, we'll get to that, Efren. I'll tell you about the.
This was like what I was saying earlier about how this show. All my expectations were wrong, because even all the way through while I was watching it, I was going, well, clearly they're going to run into Bill. Clearly he's still going to be around after all this. Then we see, obviously, without jumping too far ahead, we see Bill get injured. And I thought, oh, no, it's him that's dead. Maybe it's Frank who they see. Then it all changes again, and then they don't see anyone. Again, it kept me on my toes all the way through. And that's what I loved most about it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, as a fan of this episode in particular, like I thought it was going to go one way because to be in line with the games, it just went in a completely opposite direction. I think that was really refreshing. Yeah.
It was a good change though for once. It was a good change, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think we know as comic book fans how sacred people are with certain storylines and things, but I think they ultimately took what is sort of if they were to make a Last of Us movie, Bill would probably be the first character to go because he's not really that essential. He's only in about an hour of the game. So to flesh him out and make him like one of the best characters in the show, I think is awesome. I'm really happy about that. But yeah, in terms of gameplay, you're kind of following Bill around the town. You're looking for car parts.
So James, is it fair to say that now this episode of The Last of Us really complements the game? Like if someone like me, for example, who's never played the game before, and I now play said game, knowing what I know from the show, will I care more about the interactions with Bill and stuff moving forward?
You can take elements of it, definitely. You can imagine some of this did happen, but it sort of takes a turn later on in the game, like where their kind of story ends up. So it's not, you can't really say that this is lore for the game. But like Bill mentions like Frank is not really a character in the game at all. Like he's just mentioned very briefly, and he's more of a subtext thing, his relationship with Bill. Like he mentions, I had someone I cared about. It was a partner. But partners get you killed, and like it's not the way he says it. It's like, you could be talking about just a friend. So it's like, and he's not even mentioned by name at this point. This is the only reference for most of Bill's chapter that we get of Frank. But we get Bill in the game. This is a phenomenal performance, I think, though, and like Nick Offerman is an actor I've always liked. He's actually a great comedian as well. I actually went to see him live in Dublin doing stand up. It's fantastic.
All right.
But I didn't realize he had such good dramatic chops. Yeah, like and he manages to, I think, be funny, but plays this role with kind of a vulnerability that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
In the last scenes, and we'll see that in kind of some of the scenes. But I love this whole like it's almost like Home Alone, like the town is gone, and he just kind of goes to get this little montage of him kind of going, gathering supplies and grabbing wine and such. Did this kind of catch you off guard, like this kind of tonal shift in this part of the episode for anybody?
No.
This is how I feel. This is how I hope I would be.
Yeah. yeah, definitely. But yeah, I just had such a smile on my face during this sequence.
It was a big change, though, wasn't it? I think it was a big shift from seeing that and thinking it was going to be a certain kind of episode where he's prepping and surviving to the time jump with obviously them being a couple and just like living together. I think that was kind of
definitely. And like in terms of
just to the actual episode itself, to how he was and how he ended up was just like amazing. Like,
and in terms of like personality, Bill in the game is very much the Bill we meet at the beginning of this episode, and sort of they kind of evolve him throughout here. But just you see him setting up traps, so that was something I was quite happy to see. And he has his own generator and he's cooking meals and stuff, like living in luxury considering
I was gonna say he's not just cooking meals, is he? I mean, it's like fine dining. He's got going on there, isn't he?
And he's got his like carrots growing, he's got chickens,
wine cellar going on and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's the perfect setup for somebody to be in. And like, a lot of people make fun of these kind of doomsday preppers, but like they'll have the last laugh if it ever does happen, This I was in tears laughing at this whole part where he's just looking on the monitor and sees the infected go into the trap, and the way he says like it just doesn't get old. I thought that was great. Yeah. So we cut to 4 years later and see that he's kind of fortified the town fully. I don't know why this is white, but we'll move. Yeah. So he, so we meet here. Frank has fallen into one of his traps. Just instantly, really great kind of back and forth between them. The way he's like, "Why did you take so long to answer?" And I considered lying. And I just thought their like dynamic just instantly was great. Luca, you made a point about, do you trust this guy?
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you the same question that I asked Chris. Like, knowing what you know from the game, did you watch this and have that same suspense that maybe the rest of us did with whether or not we could trust this guy? Like, how different was it for you?
I considered that, particularly I think when they're like how forward Frank gets later on. And the way it goes in the games, you could imply like something like that maybe would have happened. But based on kind of how people had been talking about this episode coming up to it, I kind of felt like it was going to be a genuine kind of beautiful romance story.
See, because I knew nothing about it. So my fear is that something horrible was going to befall this prepper guy, this character of Bill.
Yeah.
And that means that when Joel and Ellie turn up, he's going to be a very untrusting person. And, I genuinely thought, even all the way through, even as this episode played out and I was proven wrong each time, I genuinely thought that we were just going to end up with a new character joining the squad at the end, and it would be one of these two. And the fact that, again, I loved it because it surprised me.
Yeah, well, like we do get mention of Bill and Frank in the first episode, and the first episode ends with the radio and the 80s music playing, indicating trouble. But I think that was sort of a red herring when you watch this, that it's not, it doesn't necessarily result in what you're kind of expecting. Another great kind of exchange here with the whole like this isn't an Arby's. I had a good laugh at that. Just the way these two play off each other, I think like there's a lot of screen grabs I have in this in these slides of just facial expressions and like the way they kind of just look at each other, and I think you read so much off of them. Like it's really an awe-inspiring performance from both of these guys. I love just the sort of awkwardness that kind of Nick Offerman plays here, you know, with the clothes, and the way he kind of carries himself is just great, you know. And we have this kind of the moment where they're kind of having dinner together. It's just a really kind of sweet scene, I think. But the way he comes in with his wine and everything is great. I like this kind of double entendre here that we get. Yeah, the whole he's talking about a man who knows how to pair rabbit with a Beaujolais. I never even heard of Beaujolais. Yeah. And then we get that just an absolutely beautiful scene of them playing piano.
Yeah. See, so the tension and the fear for Bill at this scene was way up there. The minute he sat down at the piano, started playing, and closed his eyes, and we see Frank moving around him, I genuinely thought that this was going to play out far differently.
Yeah, that was all very intentional, surely, wasn't it? Because I got the same feeling, Luke, that I thought this guy's about to club him over the head or something. But yeah.
Peter, did you say like in The Walking Dead, that would be kind of how you would expect it to play out? You said that earlier.
I mean, if The Walking Dead taught me anything from watching it, was you don't trust anybody. Everybody's out to get you. You know what I mean? So yeah, in the Walking Dead universe, this wouldn't end well, I don't think. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But just again, like Nick Offerman is sort of a musician. He plays like in his live shows, sort of comedic songs, but like just stunning performance. And there's a few kind of moments in the Last of Us series of like someone playing a song, and it's just like a tearjerker moment. And I thought this was just the way they're looking at each other again.
I mean, again, as well, fantastic. Like we're talking about 4 years in. We're talking about 4 years of a lot of people not even hearing music, let alone having human company. So I can only imagine what it's like for those characters to be in that situation. Yeah,
and I think, you know, a lot of people have said like, oh, this sort of, it's treated the same way as a straight relationship. But I think the fact that it's a gay couple adds another layer to it, because if you were a survivor like on your own, you probably would think you will never come across another gay person. You will kind of have no hope of ever finding love, really. But like again, the facial expression here on like Nick Offerman on the top left, the kind of vulnerability and fear in his eyes, and like they're kind of both kind of shaking. It's just incredible. I think you kind of feel that anxiety with him.
Yeah, but again, I will say that while I was watching even this bit, I still wasn't convinced that he was on the level. Do you know what I mean? I was still very concerned for the character of Bill until we got that time jump again.
Yeah, for me, I didn't really feel that way until this scene, and I felt like he was being so kind of forward of like, I'm going to stay a few more days. Then a kind of a suspicion that kind of come over me, but yeah, again, like it's stuff outside of the show had kind of indicated to me that wasn't going to be the case.
I think they both had figured initially, like that scene at the piano and thing where they first lean in for the kiss. It's like you were saying, they were nervous and shaking. They both probably had the fear that the other one was probably going to do
punch him in the face or something. You know, imagine that was a fear that
like would be scary. Like in real life, you'd be terrified because, like you said, it's been years since you've met another gay man, and it's like what's going to happen here. So they portrayed that like amazing.
I think so as well. Yeah.
I think Bill's life actually began in Rio because of the apocalypse. I think if there was no apocalypse, he would have been some crazy guy at the end of his life. You know, I think his humanity started showing because of the apocalypse. You know.
Yeah, and the letter he kind of leaves Joel at the end kind of it confirms that, I think, Efren. But yeah, it's just, I think, a really realistic portrayal of like kind of gay love flourishing, you know, the kind of anxiety of it and everything. It's beautiful, I think. So yeah, we jump to 3 years later and we have this kind of like argument. I, again, was absolutely in tears at this line of like, and the government are all Nazis. The government are all Nazis. You know, that was so perfectly played. Very kind of Ron Swanson moment for Nick Offerman there. But I love the whole like, and I don't, you know, anyone with a spouse, I'm sure, can relate to like when you have an argument and you kind of just admit defeat in the argument and go, okay, and then it just instantly leads into another argument about something else. You know, I thought that was really relatable. I felt like, you know, Frank is being very naive here, though, and like it is something. Yeah, I think like he's in The Walking Dead, how you can't trust anybody, but this is something that would get you killed immediately in another kind of.
And I guess, you know, my slight criticism at the start, this is supposed to be kind of an apocalyptic world, isn't it? Where it's not just the fungi people that you've got to be frightened of. It is the government, and it is raiders, and it is everything else. So it is very naive to host a garden party. But I guess he's developed that relationship, and he trusts them now, I suppose. Because we don't know how he met them, do we? We didn't
he just said that I've been talking to a woman on the radio. That's all he says. And like, you know, it's dangerous in the world now to talk to strangers you know, virtually.
I mean, the other thing is, right, is that it was a 4-year time jump first, then we had a 3-year, so we're way into this apocalyptic scenario.
Yeah.
At that point, I think you have to push your fear aside and hope that you can trust other people, because if not, what else? Like, again, this, like I mentioned at the beginning, this shows why you are living. This shows what you are doing all this for. And I genuinely think that it was Frank. Like, Frank's the one that revealed that to these characters and showed them that that's what the world could be.
Yeah, definitely. I think, but like the Bill's sort of resistance to changing is kind of what it's implied what drove them apart in the game. But yeah, I was shocked at this scene because in the game there's not really much. You hear things. I think you touched on this when I was gone. You hear indications of Joel's kind of time between Sarah's death and the kind of beginning of the story, that he's not a good person. Like, they did bad things. Tess sort of mentions it in the last episode about making things right. So I was kind of surprised to see them in a kind of civil environment here. Like, you know, I would have imagined Joel would just kill them both and take all their supplies and go, you know.
I think if anybody's ever in an apocalypse, you're going to do bad things to survive.
Yeah.
You got to take all that into account, you know, so.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree with what Luke was saying earlier on. I thought this would lead to some kind of confrontation, and this would lead to the bad things that they were talking about in the last episode, you know?
Yeah. Well, in you know, it's mentioned in the first episode that Bill and Frank, that they keep in contact, and they're kind of, you know, it's indicated that they're on friendly terms. So, but I could visual gag, I think, of like Bill not putting his gun down. He just hasn't pointed out on the entire time. I thought that was quite funny as well.
Like, I think Tess and Frank were probably the two that brought them together around there. They're the ones that forced it and probably said to them both before this meeting, just be on your best behavior, trust people and friends. And I think that come across quite well, I think, in the show, that without them meeting, they probably wouldn't have trusted each other and had the relationship they had, I think.
Oh, definitely, I think, yeah. But like, some good. I love the way Pedro says, "Get that gun out of my face." Was just like, oh shit, you know. It's just a great delivery of that, and we got this reference to the radio codes that they use.
Can I just say as well, it was really nice that we still got to see more of Anatov playing chess.
I agree. I'd figured from the game, you know, you don't, when a character dies, you don't see them ever again really in flashbacks or anything. So yeah, I was quite surprised.
I'm not sure we're going to see more, but it's nice that we got her for at least a third of the whole show.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, like the way this has kind of been structured. Like they could do flashbacks to more stuff, like pre-meeting Ellie. So I wouldn't be surprised, because I think, you know, it was mentioned that like the show doesn't open with a flashback, but most of this episode is flashbacks. That's kind of why. So I wouldn't be shocked if we get some kind of a time skip back or forth in every episode. So yeah, again, another timescape here. 3 years later, 2013. This is again, this is another visual. Like, it's amazing in like a story that's so melancholic. How, like in this episode in particular, just managed to have these kind of lighthearted moments. And it leads into, I think, like a really beautiful scene where they share the strawberries, and Bill lets out this kind of giggle that really kind of struck me quite a lot. And just this beautiful line of I was never afraid before you showed up, I think is phenomenal. And again, the way they kind of bounce off of each other, it makes this feel very kind of real. But yeah, exceptional performance from both of these guys. And yeah, it kind of ends with kind of a joke not on the strawberries. I thought was great as well.
Again, this scene shows that Frank gets it a little bit more than everyone else. Like, he understands that you've got to trust people, you've got to build this society and get a bartering system back on track. You know, he traded a gun for some seeds. You know, that's, as ridiculous as that might sound to someone else, that's what you need to do. That's how we built society.
Yeah, I think you've made a really good point there, about like trading the weapon for the kind of, you know, long-term kind of survival thing. But yeah, just amazing, and like tugs on my heartstrings. Like, putting these slides together, I was tearing up at certain moments. So yeah, I just think it's so effectively done.
I think when it comes to good acting, when there are good actors in a show and people care for them, that's so important. I mean, these guys are only in one episode, but you care about them. You know?
It's like I said at the beginning. I think this show does in 55 minutes that we have with Bill and Frank. What other shows can't do in an entire season.
To be fair as well, this isn't the first time the show's succeeded in this, because they made us care about his daughter Sarah for the very short period of time that she was in it. So much so that if you were new to all of this, you would assume that she was maybe going to be like the hero of the story. That's how good this was with getting you attached to these characters.
Yeah, and like for me, like I love clickers. I love the kind of infected. I love the post-apocalyptic environment. But it's the characters and the relationships that are really what makes The Last of Us special. And I think that's why I think this episode sort of is very true to what the series is about, which is why I don't really have a problem with the kind of deviating so much here.
I hope they have. Excuse me, one more thing. They showed these two characters, they're 20 years together or plus years together. I hope they do one for Joel, like right after his daughter died, you know, how he progressed to become who he was. I think that'd be
I'd be very curious. And there's a few kind of characters that kind of weave in and out with The Last of Us, like the way Bill in the game does, at least. So I'm curious if they're going to take this route with others and kind of show their kind of backstories as well. Like, if you're going to do it with anyone, I think this was the best one to do it with. But yeah, I'm not be curious. This trap is awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We got like a beautiful mix in this episode of funny, cool, and like heart-wrenching. Yeah, this was just awesome. I love this idea. And it's just amazing cinematography here. The way they're surrounded by fire and the kind of silhouettes of Frank and Bill.
I did have to suspend my disbelief that they've only been raided once.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point when he's done it to an entire town. Like, how do people not? Fair enough, they say, oh, it's a while away, Fedra won't come out, but like, just, you know, the world is full of bad people who, you know, I'm sure would want a generator or some chickens.
I completely agree with Luke, and also, again, just to be a total dick, if you're a survival expert who's got a wall of guns and tripwires and bombs and blah blah blah, I just want to suggest that standing in the center of the road with no cover at all around you maybe isn't the best tactic, and maybe he should have known that. I mean, he's literally standing slap bang in the middle, silhouetted by the flames,
and have some armor on him or something, you know, like.
Well, most of the people he's shooting at are on fire, Peter. So, like,
all right, okay, that's how it works. Well, I shot one of them so I can get up. Yeah,
I mean, it's worth it for the visual, Peter. I would say, yeah. But no, I see your point. Like, these are some of these kind of things I thought of as well.
I would have argued against Peter if he had been on God mode, but we do see him actually get shot, so I'm okay with it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So he does. There are repercussions to him being so kind of disregarding with his safety. But yeah, this kind of, I love this kind of. Bill pretty much thinks he's a goner, and Frank will let him go, and the kind of the blood-covered hands with holding each other.
I honestly thought he was a goner. Again,
Yeah, I
at
thought
this
he died.
point,
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and then in that way, it sort of plays a switcheroo with you when we get to
Yeah.
kind of the next time jump, and it's Frank who's kind of debilitated at this stage, and this just, oh my god, I like couldn't hack this. I was so gutted. Like he's they mentioned an MRI, so that'd be cancer, wouldn't it?
Could be a lot of things, but yeah,
like or he's had a stroke. I think was what I kind of initially thought.
I mean, cancer didn't jump to my mind, I have to say, because of the way I thought MS or something like that. He seemed
Yeah.
I think this picture portrayed his illness. If you look at the left-hand side, it looks clear, but then on the right-hand side, you see it's almost disfigured. I think that's him. That's a way of showing that he's getting worse.
Yeah, and just the way he has kind of the drink with the straw, and he's having soup when Bill is having like a steak. It just shows kind of how far along he is. And this whole scene was kind of heartbreaking as well. Of like he tried to go to the toilet in the night and he couldn't get back in the bed. It's just like a horrible thing for someone to have to go through, and unfortunately something a lot of people do. But this like my stomach just dropped at this moment when he says this is my last day. I was like, I had the tissues going and everything. It was just horrific. Did you kind of see this coming, any of you, when we kind of got into this kind of section of the episode?
No, absolutely not. I thought it was, I mean, I'm being negative, but this was superb. This was beautifully written. And as someone who's worked with cancer patients all my life, this was very, very relatable. I think it's easy to say.
Yeah, definitely. Luke, did you kind of see this? Did you have an indication this was going to come?
So again, like I say, it kept me on my toes all the way through. It kept throwing these curveballs at me. So by this point, I was just like, okay, right, this is going to happen. But yeah, I genuinely didn't know where this was going to end up. Even if one of them died, regardless of which one, I kind of assumed that one of them was going to die because we heard the music playing on the radio. But I didn't know. Like, I genuinely thought that it was going to be, kick down a door and you've got Joel versus Frank or Bill or something, and that's how the episode would end, and it'd be like a standoff or something. I was not expecting any of this.
Yeah, that's the same. Like I guessed based on the fact that they had cast an actor for Frank that we were going to have this kind of, but I didn't think it was going to be to the extent that they went, like taking up most of the episode and not really having anything around that with Joel and Ellie as well was quite surprising. But yeah, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. And just the facial expressions here, like on Nick Offerman's face, it's just devastating, I think, and it's really a phenomenal performance. I would be stunned if not one of these don't get an Emmy for this episode. I think it's probably going to get outstanding writing, I'd imagine. But yeah, just like incredible. Really want to give a shout out to the makeup department as well. I think this is some of the best aged up makeup I've seen.
I said the exact thing to my wife while we were watching it. I said the old age makeup is superb.
Yeah, definitely. And just another beautiful line of like, I've had a lot of bad days, just give me one more. Just incredible, and like I'm already like getting flustered just talking about it. It's so heartbreaking. But like this sequence, I like could barely look at the screen. I was crying so much. Like I was proper like hysterical. And even putting the slides together, I was like tearing up and everything. It's just beautiful, and it kind of makes you think about like, it's sad, but there's like a beauty to the fact that they get to enjoy a final day together. And I'm sure like what anyone wouldn't give to, if you've lost a loved one, to have that opportunity. But yeah, just the way they get married and I thought that was incredible. And keep in mind, like, the apocalypse happened in 2003. So like, it was a very different time for kind of gay couples then. And this whole kind of reflection of the first time that they have dinner together, they're eating the same meal, the way he walks in with the plates. The wine that they're drinking is the exact same as well. Like I just thought it was really nice kind of to see how far we've come at this stage.
I loved the oh, you've got it there, the image, the little movement of the plate.
And the player,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the way he
yeah,
turns it back, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So yeah, they've agreed to kind of poison his wine so they can go to sleep together. And then we see Nick or Bill just chug it. And did you anyone see this coming? Like I felt like it was possible, but
my
like I
girlfriend
kind of
she was like, he's probably going to put it in the bottle and poison them both. And I was like, no.
yeah. I thought it, or maybe like he would switch his one for Frank's or something like that. But like I, as you know, from having played the game, I was expecting Bill and Joel and Ellie to meet up at some point. So like, you know, I didn't see, but yeah, again, just amazing. Like the writing in this episode is just sublime. Like the way he's like, I'm satisfied, and it's like this isn't the suicide at the end of the play, and you know, it's amazing how like it's like it's not tragic, it's sad, but it's like beautiful
Lovely.
at the same time, you know, like the way he's decided there's no point in me going on. And I think in the real world it would feel different, but in this environment it's like, yeah, he's just going to spend the rest of his life setting up traps and living in the house, not talking to anyone, and why would he want to do that? And you know, I think I would probably make the same decision too, you know. Yeah, and we get this kind of scene of them hugging, and they kind of go into the bedroom together. Chris, did you recognize the music that was played in this this scene?
No, but I'm assuming it was one of the many great ones from the game.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it plays. Not to give spoilers, it plays during a very kind of famous sequence later on involving an animal. So yeah, it's in there. So like I kind of clocked that. I was like, oh, that's a nice placement of that song.
I love this scene. Though. I think it's one of the best ones of the episode. Just leaving you with just obviously seeing them both walk away.
Yeah,
like,
and like
the bodies like through the window at the end.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, like it just kind of we stay there and they leave us. I think that was really kind of nice, kind of meaning to that camera movement. So yeah, so in the game, you come to like a house, so you're kind of searching for like a car battery, I think, or car parts to get a car working, and they're kind of having an argument, and Bill sees a body and clocks it as Frank. And Joel's never met Frank, so he's like, who the hell is Frank? And he mentions, this is my partner, he's got bites. So Frank, you know, left at some point and killed himself because he got bitten. So yeah, it's surprising that they went, because it is sort of subtext, you know, like they don't really outwardly say Bill's gay and Frank was his lover. Like it's surprising that they went this deep into it, but I'm so happy that they did.
Mm.
Yeah. So we see Joel and Ellie kind of come to the town, and they're gonna go into the house, and we get this kind of letter, and he reads it out, and I just thought I could almost hear Nick Offerman like reading this out, you know, and I love the whole like the he part, just like was so unexpected. Although like I never liked you, but I respect you and everything. And so like every character in The Last of Us, kind of that Joel and Ellie come across, serves kind of a purpose. And Bill is sort of a cautionary tale about like to Joel about, if you don't change your ways, you'll end up alone. And I think this letter is like a nice way of kind of getting that message to Joel without having him meeting Bill in the show. So I thought that was quite clever. And then yeah, this is kind of the moment they saw, oh, it's safe. It's like, oh shit, yeah, you know. But I think Bella Ramsey delivers this so well, like the way she stops in the middle of a reading, and we have the next bit where Joel kind of goes out of the house and he almost starts crying, realizing kind of everybody he's been friends with is gone. But we get the car, so I think that's a good positive. Yeah, and in the game they get the car in the garage. So there is a letter in the game, and I'm going to read it out because I think it's an interesting kind of counterpoint to this. So this is how Bill and Frank's kind of relationship ends in the game. So, well, Bill, I doubt you'd ever find this note because you were too scared to ever make it to this part of town. But if for some reason you did, I want you to know I hated your guts. I grew tired of the shitty town and of your set in your ways attitude. I wanted more from life than this, and you could never get that. And that stupid battery you kept moaning about, I got it. But I guess you were right. Trying to leave this town will kill me. Still better than spending another day with you. Good luck, Frank. It's just crazy, like how like negative their relationship ends in the game. You know, so I was quite surprised at that. Any kind of thoughts on that one?
That letter kind of sounds like Frank from the show, though. Now, when you think about it, having like a bit of an argument with him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one of the argument days, it sounds like he's left him a letter, like a pissed off letter.
Yeah. Anyone kind of surprised that this is kind of the route that they have in the games?
It's very different, isn't it, to the show? And just from what you've said so far about them in the game, I far prefer the show version than the game version.
I do too. That definitely. Yeah, but so I'm watching this, and like this is a letter you can find. You can miss this, and a lot of people don't pick up on the fact that Frank and Bill were kind of in a relationship, because he only ever refers to him as like my partner, but sort of the context of it, you know, you wouldn't necessarily assume that. But you find the letter in the house, and you can choose to give it to Frank or to Bill, and he just kind of waves it off and kind of hides how he feels about it. And then kind of ends with Joel kind of saying he's sorry about it, and Bill's like, "Get the fuck out of my town." And then Joel and Ellie kind of leave. So that's how the sequence in the game kind of finishes up. So yeah, in the show we have Joel. I think this is sort of, Luke, you had mentioned earlier about the first part of like he's sort of starting to accept Ellie. But I think really it's for me, I think it's kind of more here. The way he's looking, he says, "Show me your arm," because he's like, okay, this is actually real, you know. I think that's quite interesting. But then we have like this whole, if we're gonna go, this is how we're gonna do this, and this is ripped exactly from the games, pretty much. But the way he refers to it as a condition, I think is quite interesting, and it's very telling, I think, of how he looks at Ellie, like there's something wrong with her. I think that's really interesting, but again, this is kind of, we're clear what you say goes, and it's a bit from the game. It's placed a bit differently. This scene takes place in the game right after Tess dies, so before they meet Bill. So I thought it was interesting that they placed it later, and that's why I was kind of surprised that in the beginning of the episode that Ellie says like, "Don't blame me," because it's not really the attitude that Ellie in the game kind of takes.
I think it's more for the audience's benefit. Like, we have to see that story of Bill and Frank for us to see what is worth living for, so that then when these two characters have this discussion, we can be on board with it.
Yeah,
I think it's played out for that exact reason.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know it's a t-shirt, James?
Well, I have a slide, Chris, don't show bad. But yeah, we have this kind of, again, she's asking for a gun. She's told no. It's sort of a thing in the game once or twice, but they really hone in on the show, I think. I thought it was very funny that she grabs toilet paper. I mean, of course you would, but just because of how in the last episode she's throwing the newspaper to go to the toilet with.
Yeah.
And here we go. So this brought me so much joy seeing this. And I think they've sort of hidden this T-shirt in the marketing. I don't remember really seeing a clear image of it, but this is like Ellie's kind of iconic look in the games. Like if you have a Last of Us statue or figure or poster, this is what she's wearing on it. So I was quite happy to see that. Does this bring a smile to your face, Chris?
Yeah. As soon as I seen it, I was like, "Nah, t-shirt."
Yeah. So, and done a lot more naturally than like, if you, Chris, have you seen the Uncharted movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, just in that one where like he puts the bandolier on and the Uncharted music kicks in. Like I like the way this is done a lot more naturally than that, you know. So yeah, Ellie finds the gun that Frank kind of has in the drawer that we see earlier, and she stuffs in her bag. And then we see Joel in his kind of iconic outfit. So I was just seeing these two together. I was just
didn't notice that one.
yeah. And this is actually this is the shirt that Frank is wearing when they're arguing about Tess, about the girl on the radio. So I clocked that earlier as well. Like it was good. But yeah, I'm just, when you see a character kind of come into their iconic kind of looks, I always think that's really exciting. So this is sort of like when Daredevil gets his red suit, you know. Another great shot. I think I love how Belly Ramsey plays this, like how excited she is getting in the car. And it's like, yeah, you wouldn't think about it, but she's like probably never been in one. So she's like playing with the mirrors, and this shot of like Joel when she pushes it in, it's great, I thought. The way she's like, it's like a spaceship. I thought that was really funny. Like, and again, an endearing thing about Ellie is how new the world is, and how she's looking at it from like a different perspective. You know, the way she's like.
See, I find that again, maybe I'm overthinking it. I find that weird because if she's never really been in a car before, then why would she big it up even further to a spaceship? Because she's definitely not been in one of those or seen one of those. So
Well, I think
it's still not on the level.
So in the game, and I'm curious if they're gonna make a reference to this in the show, but like, you know, there's that video game earlier, like the Turning, just like a Mortal Kombat riff, but they use Mortal Kombat in the show. There's in the first episode that kind of fictional movie. One of the collectibles in the game is actually a comic book series called Savage Starlight. It's like a sci-fi thing, and so Ellie has like this kind of interest in like science fiction and space and spaceships and everything from that comic book, and you can kind of collect them and give them to her to read.
Okay.
So I'm curious if they're going to make a reference to that at some point. I really hope they do. It's a cool cool visuals in it. Like you get the covers for each of them. So yeah, I'm not sure if they will, but I hope they do anyway. And just another great, again, this is sort of, I don't know how I didn't clock this, but this is the tape she finds is the song that they're playing on the piano. In the episode, the Linda Ronstadt thing, and I didn't catch that, but like, yeah, listen back, it's beautiful, and the way that song is kind of playing as they zoom out of Bill and Frank's window was fantastic. And I agree definitely that it's great that they didn't just decide to have a shot of them or something. It's left kind of there. Yeah, stunning. What do you think of this kind of last couple of minutes of the episode?
Yeah, great, really good.
Yeah.
It's not like this in the video game, obviously, right? This scene is new. This is different from the video game.
No, well, they just kind of say bye to Bill. You know, and like that's another thing. It's like the fact that Bill survives in the game. That's something that should have pissed people off, is that like Bill dying. But like I think it was so beautifully done. I don't really care, and we never see Bill again after this point in the game, anyway.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. So that's The Last of Us episode 3. For me, the strongest episode of so far, and I think I'm going to try not to like negatively compare future episodes to this. Like there are some really great relationship-based stories coming, but like I think this is nice that it is almost kind of its own thing as well. So I feel like I can watch the rest of it and not kind of judge it. You know. Peter, just any kind of final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, great television. It was a very strong piece of television, and I think you're right. I think it deserves some plaudits from the awards kind of people. I enjoyed it. I still think it was, for me, a bit of a jolt, a bit of a shock. I enjoyed it as an episode it was, but I don't know. I think I was expecting something different going into it. But very good, very good.
Yeah. Efren?
I like Bill's long hair. I may grow my beard out again.
Yeah.
I just think it's a whole new series. I mean, for some of us here in this panel, I've never even heard of it. Like I said, until you mentioned it to me, James. And even when I got you the video game, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. That's the video game that I got you.
Yeah,
you know, and I just think it's just like The Walking Dead. I never read the comic books I just watched the TV show and it grabbed my attention. And, like Luke said, I'm glad they don't put it out all at once. It builds up episode by episode. I think that's very good. That's the thing about Netflix. Once a show comes out, boom, they give you all the episodes if you want to binge. I'd like it, growing up, seeing a show episode every week. It makes it more exciting. And I think you showed the jump from episode 1 and 2 to 3, how the viewership went up. I think it's just going to keep on going up until episode 9.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, you got thoughts on this one?
I mean, for once you had the time jump, obviously we thought Bill was dead and he wasn't. I was pretty much just in silence. I think from obviously watching them both, like watching him get worse, watching Frank get worse and stuff. It takes a lot for the series to put me to just absolute silence and just staring at the TV. It blew me away. I think it was just, even as a standalone episode of TV, if it wasn't The Last of Us, I still think it was amazing. I think it just absolutely blew me away. Just acting and story and just like the emotion, it was just amazing. I think the best way to probably say it is that my girlfriend hasn't played the games. She knew of the games. I think she watched me years ago play a couple of stories on it. But she said she would watch a full series of Bill and Frank.
There is some people hoping to get a spin-off, and I'm curious if maybe we'll get a mini series or something with them.
That would be really interesting, mind, wouldn't it? That would be good.
Yeah, I think there's probably more stories to tell.
When you say that, it must mean it was good for somebody to pick it up and enjoy
like,
it.
You know, like Luke said earlier, and I was of the same opinion. We only really saw one raid. And I don't believe that over all those years, that was the only time anything ever happened. So you could have a spin-off of all kinds of stuff going on, couldn't you?
Yeah, and like, you know, Tommy could pop out in it, or you know, you'd have Pedro Pascal and Anna Torv come in again. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think like a multiple seasons thing. Yeah, but you know, you could do like almost a Better Call Saul with it and do, you know,
trades. Obviously, like after that meeting, they've done some trades in that obviously 10-year gap. They will have done some back and forward trades with each other and things like you mentioned, fixing the fence up and stuff like that. So I think they will have had some kind of relationship.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to, like, it's probably too, you know, obviously it's too late to do it this season, but like next season maybe get another flashback with them or something, just to kind of bring them back as a fan service moment.
But then there's the danger, isn't there, that it was such a beautiful episode. Do you lessen its impact and its importance by going back and doing more?
I think
I would leave as is.
Yeah. Luke, final thoughts on episode 3?
Yeah, so I don't know how many people are still watching us after this amount of time, but since you've given me the platform, I want to take the opportunity to praise Sony, because I think that if this was a bad show, Sony would get a lot of stick for it. I don't know how involved they are with the whole production.
Well, it's PlayStation Productions is a production company, so it's by that.
You know, people have their problems with Sony. They compare it a lot to the MCU and say, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They don't make good movies. They don't make good TV. This proves otherwise. So, you know, being one of the most successful TV shows, especially after only like 1, 2, 3 episodes, as well as getting a season 2 and being like on par with Game of Thrones as like the general talk amongst the town. I just want to throw that praise towards Sony, because I don't think they deserve as much stick as they normally get. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it all. This was a beautiful episode, one of the best things I've seen on TV for 5-10 years, like I said at the beginning. And, you know, it came from that company.
Yeah, I think they deserve credit. Like you couldn't ask for a stronger source material really than The Last of Us. And if they shit the bed with this one, there's not really any point of them trying with other ones. Like, it is this as strong source material as you could ask for. So, but yeah, no, I think you're bang on. Like, for me, my love of this isn't really connected to the fact that I'm a Last of Us fan, I think, because there's so much new in this. I think this is like a masterclass of storytelling and of acting, script writing. Just one of the most beautiful pieces of media I've really ever seen, and just not even on its own. And I loved it. And I think it's if someone asked me in 10, 15 years time, what do you think is one of the best episode of television ever made, this will be one that jumps in my head. And I think we are seeing it's having that kind of impact with other people as well. So absolutely phenomenal. I think, like, this is, you know, I'm not going to try and compare future episodes to it. I'm just going to think of this as its kind of own thing. But yeah, it's I hope the series can maintain this kind of level of quality, and I'm fairly confident it will.
James, just like any TV show, there's going to be a bad episode one of these days. I want to see your point of view.
I'd be curious. Like, I don't know if it will. Like, they've made it so tight, 9 episodes.
Going back to what I was saying before about how, you know, you needed this episode to show you what people are fighting for and what they want. You know, I think so often in these apocalyptic shows, an audience member can look at that and go, oh, I'd hate to live in that situation. I'd kill myself. And, you know, seeing that happiness can be achieved, I think that's why this episode is so important moving on, because no matter what our characters encounter, we know that it can work, and we've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sort of plays into future kind of things in this series as well. So speaking of future, we'll be back next week at 8 p.m. for episode 4. Peter, you might be happy to know this is probably a more action-oriented episode. We'll be meeting some bad dudes. This character on screen is a new one called Kathleen, so I'm curious how she's going to fit into this story. Just before we go, guys, what's coming up on your channel? Before you do, I was on the Attention Seeking Geek channel last night. We did a little special on the kind of new DCU projects that James got announced, so you can check that over at Attention Seeking Geek. Peter?
Yeah, just released this video. This is the 1/6 scale Hot Toys Captain America. That's just come out, so I've just picked this up. So I've done a little unboxing video on my channel on that one.
I love that.
It's a stunning figure, Chris. And then this is my menu of Monday night live shows. So I go live every Monday at 8 o'clock. Next show is Let's Talk Toys, which is this Monday, which I think a few of you are joining us on, where we'll talk all things action figures, 1/6 scale, smaller scale figures, vintage toys, and computer games. So I'm sure there'll be some Last of Us talk there as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Lots going on.
So that'd be good fun. Efren, what you got coming up?
I'm trying to do another Mount Rushmore of comics where I pick. Usually somebody joins me. We pick like top artists from the Silver Age, for example, or top comic books from the modern age. Whatever topic I feel like picking. I think we're going to do one on indie writers only on next one, and always do a top 5 comic books that we hope you picked up. This is from Zap Kapow, the service that I use to keep track of all my books. Did you know? These are just like 1-minute shorts where I talk about facts, histories of comics. Like, did you know Batman was so and so? Yeah. And I also do comic book read of the week. The one I didn't put in there, which is my favorite, is when I do it with Peter when we pick our advanced orders. That's always fun to do. We do that once a month, and that's it.
Awesome. So you can check that out at Passpoint. And the link for everybody's channels will be in the description down below. Luke, this is an interesting topic now.
Yeah, so this is this week's article for Go Collect, and I wanted to ask the question whether or not comic book fans will care who Stan Lee was. Not necessarily remember him. I think we're always going to get it drummed in. He made Spider-Man. Oh, he made Marvel what it is. But as we grow older, we now sit and watch the Star Wars films when they came out, and the next generation is going to watch the MCU, and they're going to see this man turn up in some 20 odd films, and I just wonder if they care who he is. So if you get a chance, I'd like to encourage you to head over to the Go Collect website and give it a read.
Awesome. And what you got on your channel?
A great topic, Luke. Peter, real quick, do your kids care about Stan Lee? They're older.
Yeah,
They do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Because I've drummed it into them. They wouldn't care not.
Yeah. And on your channel?
And on my channel. So I'm still just doing my content monthly, so there's nothing immediate to put out like on the main feed. But I have started experimenting with shorts. I kind of put this off for a long while. And now I've not only dipped my toe in, but I'm actually going to be releasing a short every day in the month of February, starting from today. So there's actually one already there for you guys to go and check out.
Nice. Awesome. And Chris, your thumbnail has gone astray. So if you could just let us know. I think that must be the white one. Yeah. So if you could just let us know
unboxing some snow. Yeah, that's what
yeah.
I'm just working on. Like, I was a bit late to the stream tonight. I'm just working on I'm doing an annual top 10 comics in my collection. So I've done one when I very first started my channel, but it was 8 months ago, I think. And I'm doing another one now. I'm going to do one annually. So I'm doing a top 10 in my collection, and I probably need to start doing a bit more shorts and things like Luke.
Yeah,
I've only got a few on my channel, but. So
awesome.
Work. But yeah, a top 10 will be coming the next day or so.
Great. I love an hour list. So I'd be excited to check one out. So ladies and gentlemen, this has been Firefly Chats. Thank you so much for watching. You can if you could leave a like, that'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of episode 3 of The Last of Us. And don't forget, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light, endure and survive,